everyone. Oh my goodness, that was your cardio for the day. Welcome to the Golden Girls Legacy Panel. I'm Frank DeCaro, and I'm thrilled and delighted to be able to host tonight's event, and we're so thrilled that you're out there watching. I hope you're hanging in there. Hope you're doing well. We're trying to keep each other's spirits up, and we're doing a pretty good job of it. Now, as I like to say, COVID calories don't count, so feel free to have cheesecake, anything you might want to order at the Rusty Anchor, anything you need to have something from a hot dog hacienda, whatever you need, you should be able to get and enjoy during our show today. I am thrilled to have three of the most knowledgeable, funny, delightful people you're ever going to talk to Golden Girls about. And so I'm going to start closest to home because he's across the apartment from me in his own, he's sequestered over there in Golden Girls Haven there. Mr. Jim Colucci, who is the author of Golden Girls Forever, the New York Times best-selling book that really upped the standards of what a TV companion book should be. Mr. Jim Colucci, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Frankie. I don't know if you can hear me and you talking from across the apartment, but look at the part of our apartment that is the Golden Girls living room by magic. I love it.
Your room is more well decked out than mine, but I do have your book cover behind me because I know what side my bread is buttered on. So there it is, back there. I want to welcome one of the, okay, he is like an original gangster, Golden Girls writer. He's funny and delightful, writing a book that talks about the girls, Golden, Gilmore, and otherwise, and Roseanne. And Mr. Stan Zimmerman is with us. Stan Zimmerman. Hey, Stan.
Hi, how are you?
I'm delightful.
You're delightful.
I am. And you are the real Stan tonight, so we're glad that you're with us. And
hi, it's me, Stan. Hi, everybody. I see all you guys writing. Hi, Amy, Andrea, Danny, Dorothy. Hi. So how do we do this? How do we put this on Facebook Live?
It's on now, I believe.
It is. It's there. There you are. I can see your beautiful face. What you do is you go to facebook.com/flipphone, and you can share it from there, and then you can put it on your own page, which I have just done to Frank DeCaro and Frank DeCaro Show, my two pages. So definitely check that out. Jim has done that on Jim Colucci, and you'll do that there. All right. Now, our next guest, our third guest for this evening, truly is a superstar, super fan. I have seen her perform and have been blown away, particularly the evening in which she not only played Frida Claxton, she played Barbara Thorndike here in Los Angeles. She is the inimitable and one of my absolute favorite RuPaul drag queen all-star people. I love her to pieces. Alaska Thunderfuck 5000 is with us as well. No one loves Golden Girls more than she does.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. Hi.
Everyone is thrilled that you're joining us today, and thank you for, as you see, we've all painted up for the evening, all of us. And
you all look amazing.
Thank you. Well, I think it's kind of amazing. I was really thinking about this as I was, shaving and washing the top of my head, which is basically all I have to do, is that so many people are complaining about, oh, all I do is wear pajamas. Drag queens, God love you, will paint up for us, and thank you for that right off the top. Painted up for the evening, all of us. And
you all look amazing.
Thank you. Well, I think it's kind of amazing. I was really thinking about this as I was, shaving. What is that noise? That's me coming over me. Stop that. That sounds dirty. It's that so many people are complaining about, oh, all I do is wear pajamas. Who's got their sound on? Turn that off.
And I think you, Stan, make sure you don't have sound coming from another source.
Yeah, I turned it off.
Okay.
Turn that off. One of me is plenty. Jim will tell you. One of me maybe too much, actually. So I want to ask each of you how the Golden Girls first entered your life. Alaska, let's start with you. How did Golden Girls first enter your life?
Well, my first memory of the Golden Girls is, it must have been on TV when I was a child, because I remember the episode where Rose is like fake seducing the the doctor who made a pass at Blanche. And I remember Rose backing up against the door and being like all fake sexy to seduce him. That image is like, that was my first like memory of the Golden Girls. But I really got into them when I was in high school, and it was because of Lifetime. Like Lifetime was airing them, and I was like, this is cool. This is punk. Like nobody my age is watching this, but it's so good and funny and well written. So like, I just thought it was really cool.
And Jim, what about you? What was your earliest Golden Girls memory?
Well, I'm old enough that I remember the development of the show. I was a TV nerd as a kid, one of those kids who ran to read the TV guide when it came and kept up on what was in development for the pilot season. And so I remember that pilot season in 1985, reading how Bea and Betty and Rue and this newcomer, Estelle, were all going to be in one pilot and possibly series together. And I remember thinking, that's a super group of comedy. And I went away to a summer program that summer, so I was without my TV guide for months and months. But when I came back and knew what the fall schedule was, I was thrilled from moment one to tune in on September 14th, 1985. So I watched it all through, but Alaska is so right that the show has become more of a phenomenon since it was on the air, not less, which is so unusual. And part of it is the decades of reruns on Lifetime.
Now, Stan, did you have any Golden Girls consciousness before you got the job in the first season writing for them?
No, because it wasn't even on the air. My writing partner, Jim, and I were pitching episodes to get a freelance job. We were doing Family Ties. We had gotten a job on Valerie Harper's show called Valerie, and we actually had to turn that down when we got the Golden Girls gig. But we didn't know. It was just some show with about 4 old ladies, and they said, would you come in and watch the pilot? Because that's how the writers, they didn't even give us like DVDs because there were no DVDs. So we went in and watched the pilot, and then you go home and you think of ideas to come in and pitch them. So it was nothing. It was just a show with really great actors in it. I had seen Estelle in Torch Song Trilogy, so I knew how wonderful she was. So she wasn't like somebody I didn't know, but I was so excited that she was getting this opportunity on a new TV show.
And when you got how did you get that first script? Because that story, I remember you telling me, is fascinating.
Yeah, so you go in there when you go to pitch for a show. It was just for one episode. And so you just go in there with like maybe 4 or 5 fully fleshed out stories, like a beginning, middle, and an end. And then others you just have like maybe 5 or 6 one-liners. And everyone we pitched, they were like, no. And we're like, oh, fuck. And then we're walking out the door, and I remember it at Sunset Gower. I remember the door right to the left. We're at the door. My writing partner, Jim Berg, was out the door. I'm in the doorway. For some reason, I just turned around and said, what if Rose's mother came to visit? And they all were quiet for a second, and then they said, come back and sit down on the couch. And we sat down, and we figured out what that story would be, and we went off when we wrote that episode. And that became Rose's mother, AKA Blanche and the Younger Man. And that pretty much went on the air pretty close to our first draft. And that's why they asked us to come on the show.
That's fantastic.
And as we were writing it, we would go to all the tapings because we had no money and it was entertainment, but it was also a way to learn what the show was as it was, the first couple ones. Because there's a point when they do the pilot and then there's months and months and months until they start, filming more episodes.
And how soon after that were you hired full time?
Like that. I mean, it was pretty quick the minute we handed the script in. And they said, look, they got it. So it's very hard when you're not on staff and you're outside in your own world to be able to recreate those characters with that dialogue. That's a whole art unto itself besides just writing scripts. It's to be able to hear it and repeat it. So and how did Dorothy sound? And we only knew from the pilot and maybe 1 or 2 of the first episodes that they were filming.
Now, I want to tell people our event tonight is a benefit for the Lodge Miami Victim Response, which is for people who are victimized by domestic violence or rape or other really terrible things, and they have a place to go. And so we want to make sure that you know that you can Venmo donations to the Lodge Miami Victim Response. If you do it, Venmo to @Flip Phone, which is, of course, our producers tonight, and they will make sure that the folks at the Lodge Miami get it. We wanted to do something Miami-based and something that really helped women out as well, and so we thought that would be a really fun thing.
So thank you, Chad, for arranging that.
So yeah, Chad, thank you so much. And also, if you donate more than $20, which we hope you will, we hope you'll dig deep, you will be entered into a raffle to get, and I don't even know if you know these exist, you probably do if you're Golden Girls super fans, you will get, Jim, do you have one you can show people, Jim, what they might be? What are those?
These are Golden Girls Geeky Tikis from Toink Toys and created by Beeline Creative. They've provided us a set of these for one winner who donates $20 or more to the charity. And this is Dorothy, but there's a set of 4, and I got mine in the mail the other day. I actually did an unboxing video opening them because it was so exciting. I'll just hold them all up. They're amazing.
So donate $20 and you will be able to be entered into the raffle.
And Sophia. They're amazing.
And producer Chad, they're also now available in the store. They sold out immediately, but you can get them now too.
What store?
We have a link. There's a link you can follow to get them.
I'll put them
We will post that. Jim has a hot link for that he will put up. And
they
we'll
just came back into stock. They sold out within like an hour or two last week when they were first advertised online, and now they're back as of yesterday. So I don't know for how long, but they have them right now.
I think people are drinking a little more these days. What do you think?
Yeah, perfect. I think they'll be perfect for the Golden Girls cruise next year. You know how people were carrying around like those plastic tumblers and they just have them refilled because you can drink so much on a cruise? Wouldn't it be cool to just be walking around with this and a straw and just have Sophia refilled all day?
Well, we all had to choose on the cruise which character we were. And of course, I'm Sophia and Jim's a Dorothy. So we made sure that people knew that we wore our name tags that said which character that we were. And I'm actually Count Bessie, the piano playing chicken, but they didn't have a hang tag for that. So I had to be Sophia. But I'm kind of, what would you say, Jim? Sophia in the streets and Count Bessie in the sheets? Is that?
Yeah, I think that's it. That pecking, Frank.
Thank you.
Wow. Okay.
Unfortunate, I have to say. It's not a happy thing. Jim, how did it happen that you wrote not 1, but 2 books about the Golden Girls?
Oh, 2 was an accident, but a happy accident. I had grown up, as I said, as a TV geek, and because I'm old and this was before the internet, the only way you could get information on your favorite shows was TV Guide, or occasionally there'd be a book published about the show when it was a hit. But a lot of times the books were kind of quickie affairs, and they'd be rife with errors sometimes, and they wouldn't be very in-depth. And I always wanted that kind of thing, particularly for the Golden Girls, because I had a sense there was so much to know behind the scenes. And I didn't at first get a chance to do that. I got an opportunity as a journalist myself to write a book about Will and Grace, which was a great experience getting that book out. But that gave me kind of the clout to go introduce myself to all the actresses, really cold, only having the Will and Grace book credit to recommend me, and convince them all to spend an afternoon in their living rooms, it turned out, for each of them, other than Estelle, who wasn't well, to spend the time and let me do interviews. So once I had the interviews under my belt, it was a matter of selling a book. There are rights issues to that, and so it ended up becoming 2 books. One that was done for the LGBT community in 2006, called The Q Guide to the Golden Girls, and that was really about specific episodes and what it meant to the gay community. And then in 2016, Golden Girls Forever, which is the much more kind of lavish illustrated version I always wanted to do, the kind of behind the scenes I always wanted when I was.
And Jim, later on, we will ask you about what it was like to sit and get drunk with B. Arthur.
Oh,
okay?
God, that was great.
You'll have to tell us about that. Alaska, you've done podcasts where you talk about the Golden Girls. You've done stage shows. Tell me more about the kinds of programs that you've put together out of your love for the girls.
Well, I mean, the Golden Girls is just like the gift that literally keeps giving. I see Carrie from Out on the Lanai, the podcast. I see
Yay.
her
Amazing podcast.
in the chat thing. She keeps popping up. I do vow to. I mean, I don't know. I'm obsessed with the whole phenomenon. And so like we sort of just eat and live and breathe it. So we're like, why don't we do a show about it? So we do this cabaret show where we do a bunch of the music that comes from the show. And then I like magically transform into each of the four girls and do like a little bit or a little song as each one of them. Like Sophia, I'm on my knees with knee pads, so I'm really short. But it's like
a place you've never been before, right?
What?
A place you've never been before.
Never, never.
There's not a person within the sound of my voice who hasn't been on the knee pads. Don't give me that. Everyone listening to the show and watching along knows what we're talking about. It's a dirty group. So wait, so you've not only played all four of the women, but here in LA, tell people, for those, I mean, I was so blessed to be able to be in that audience. You played Frida Claxton, who's my other favorite character, and then you played Barbara Thorndike. It was a double feature. What the heck was that like?
Well, my like idea of like the afterlife or like heaven, like if I die, I would like to be reincarnated into the universe of the Golden Girls and just perpetually live as different characters within that world. So getting to do those shows with Jackie B, Sherry Vine, Sam Pancake, Drew Droege, Rob
Gaither.
What?
Danielle Gaither has been.
Yes.
Great people.
Getting to go down into that basement theater with 60 seats and do those episodes is just like so much fun. And we do like 3 shows a night and it's just like crazy. And the dressing room is like a hallway. It's like there's nothing like it. I love it so much. I would do it anytime. I would play Dreyfus the dog. Like I don't care. I will play any role. I do not care. So
Alaska, I have to tell you, the night that you were doing Barbara Thorndike,
mm-hmm.
I tried to get Barbara Thorndike herself, Bonnie Barton, the actress who lives about a block from me here in LA, to come. And I was phone stalking her because I wanted to surprise you, and I thought it would be so much fun. And it's funny because it's like a story in itself. It was like trying to get the real Barbara Thorndike to go somewhere. She was very crotchety, and she was, the woman's like 90 years old. And at one point, I just remember saying, she said, like, why? I made it sound worse and worse as I said, it's the basement of a Mexican restaurant, and there's one fire exit. Like, I really was not doing a good job selling it. And at one point, she said, why would I want to go to that? And I said, because it would be fun. And she said, I don't do fun. So I couldn't get her to come. But it would have been amazing, and I'm sure she would have been blown away by how you did Barbara Thorndike. You were so good.
Stan, okay, here we are, decades later.
Here we are. I have to tell you, though, it was so surreal because I've gone to a couple of the shows at Casita de Campos with those performers to hear something I wrote so long ago. They literally do word for word of the scripts. And do you know how they got the scripts? Do you know the story?
No. Tell us.
Mine literally watches the shows, stops them, and types out every single word.
Oh my God.
Because you have to remember, we don't have the scripts aren't on the computer because we type them on, I think, maybe typewriters. I don't know. And so I have hard copies of the original scripts, but there are no digital copies of it. And Sherry did them. And I mean, she doesn't have like the action lines that we wrote, but she has all the dialogue. Isn't that crazy?
Then you could help a sister out and Xerox a few for her. You can send them over.
Maybe I will after this is all over. Yes.
No one has to know. We're going to keep it secret.
Yeah, right.
Because it is a parody. Let's not get anyone nervous about that at all.
Well, that was a funny thing when I'd watch it, and they would kind of make faces at the audience, like when they go, John Cameron Swayze, and they go like, who the hell is that? And I'm just going like, oh, I'm sorry. That was such a
But they make a great joke out of that. I remember there was one moment where Jackie Beat as Dorothy says something. She quotes Dr. DeBakey. Yeah. And I didn't know who that was. I had to look up. It was the inventor of the artificial heart or one of them. But when she said it, she did exactly like you said. She looked at the audience like,
I don't know.
Anybody? And it makes it even funnier.
Excuse me, Jim Colucci, you came home because I didn't get to go to that one, and you said, do you know who Dr. DeBakey is? And I said, the artificial heart guy? And you were like, that's who it is. So that was how
that's it.
Happened.
Well, you're my husband, Google, same thing.
It's the same. Because I live with the human IMDb. That's what I tell people. Now, Stan, why do you think decades later we are still madly in love with the Golden Girls?
I think because it was just the perfect combination of characters written beautifully by Susan Harris, and then you get the most amazing comedic television women of all time to embody them. And it was just, they were cast in just the right parts. And it's, you know, it was just magic. And it happened so rare. I can't remember any other show where everybody loves it, of all ages. You know, like when people that watch Friends, it seems like it's a certain demographic, but this show is just so wide. And I think because it touches so many people on so many different levels, I think it's just still very, very relevant.
Jim, what's your take on why Golden Girls remain so popular?
I think that it has perennial themes and issues that still are not solved today. So it is very timely. And I think despite how we just talked about Dr. DeBakey and a few references, it didn't tend to make too many timely references. So it really stays fresh by not having too many things that people have to look up or Google. I just think that it talks about, and it speaks from a place of older women who are, not to use too academic a word, but disenfranchised or feel powerless in the way that they get shoved aside in our world. And I think there will always be people of every demographic who feel that way and can relate to that.
Alaska, what's your take on why it remains so popular?
Well, I mean, there like everything that you guys said, but I mean, also it's very comforting to a lot of people, and I think because it's very hopeful in the sense of like it shows like, because everybody gets old. Like that is the thing that all humans have in common. Like they get older, and so like it's this portrayal of people who have gotten older, who are living full lives, and they're happy and they're supported, and they have a family system, and they're kind of like gorgeous and like just like crushing it. Like they're active socially, they're like volunteering, they're in the ladies'
sexually.
Right, they're like getting laid constantly. So like it's very like hopeful. It's like and in that way it's like very comforting.
Yeah, it makes getting old not seem as frightening as it may be otherwise, because you have your friends. I was going to say, and I know Jim agrees with this, I think we all agree on this, it's also popular particularly with the LGBTQ people, because it's a chosen family story, and we were not quite used to seeing chosen family stories before this show.
Chosen family where everybody looks their best at all times, always has a perfect hairdo, perfect makeup, even when they wake up at 2 a.m, supposedly from a sound sleep to have cheesecake. They're in a gorgeous gown, gorgeous makeup and hair, and they always have a bitchy retort. I mean, that's the family you want to choose.
Definitely. Hey, I want to remind everybody, we are doing this for charity tonight, and you can donate to the Lodge Miami. And I'm going to hold this up. And it's Victim Response Inc. is their name, and they help victims of rape and of domestic violence. And so I want to tell you guys, you can Venmo to Flip Phone. And if you do Venmo more than $20 to Flip Phone for this, you will be entered into a raffle, and you will win a set of the Geeky Tikis of the Golden Girls that just were released and immediately sold out, and they're only starting to be restocked. Jim, can you hold them up again?
So we have one set, right? That's one winner will win.
Yes. And there you have it. You can see Jim can hold them up. There's 4 mugs, and it's $100 value. And they're $25 each,
And
essentially, or
right
thereabouts.
This is producer Chad. We're at $541 donated so far.
All
Nice.
right, that's wonderful.
See if we can get
Open those
going.
pockets. I know it's a tough time for everyone financially, so but definitely open those pockets and donate, because you get these geeky teas and they're really rocking. They're so didn't you always want to drink a suffering bastard out of Blanche Devereaux? Didn't you? I'm telling you, you can make
No, a Sex on the Beach.
or that you could definitely do that. Hey, I want to tell you guys, we've gotten lots of questions from folks on the net. And they're really, really good. They're things I had never thought about before. So let's start with this one. Kathy wrote in, and whoever would know the answer, you can signal and we'll just, were any of the Golden Girls characters actually based on real people? Jim, any ideas?
The names were, but not necessarily the characters. The characters were, they wanted to have the smart one, they wanted to have the naive one. So characters were archetypes. But the names came from real people. Petrillo was the last name of somebody that Susan Harris, the creator, knew in Mount Vernon, New York, where she was growing up. Nyland was the name of somebody they met when they were sailing the Adriatic one time. Devereaux they just picked because it was French, and it kind of reminded them of Blanche in A Streetcar Named Desire, and they wanted French and Southern. So some of the names, and Coco, the houseboy from the pilot, was named for Susan Harris's dog. So the names came from real life in a lot of cases, but the types were archetypes.
And Spornak is from the show as well.
Oh, and of course, thank you. How did I forget that? Spornak was the name of, he went on to become a well-known producer in his own right. I interviewed him when he was a producer on The Office. I sat there in his office on The Office talking about the Golden Girls. But Kent Spornak had been Susan Harris's assistant and then became, went further into television.
So someone wrote in and wants to know, let's see, Joe wrote in and wants to know, what happened to Coco? Stan, you can handle that one.
I can. Well, from what I understand is that Stell was only supposed to be like a guest star. And I think they saw the connection that she had and how funny she was, that she was the one that could come in and like bang a joke out, that they didn't need another character that could do that. So I think that's, when you write a pilot, you don't know until you see it on its feet. And then once you see it filmed, you get a whole different idea of what the show needs and what the direction is. And especially because when you write it, they didn't have those actors cast yet. They came together. And that's why it's great to have that time between May when you shoot the pilot and then August when you film the rest of the shows.
It's so true. It's everything Stan said, that they didn't realize until they shot the pilot what a secret weapon they had in Estelle, and they had what they call a laugh spread, which is just laughter that goes on forever. And it made the pilot so long, like 28 or 29 minutes, that they had to cut so much from it. And they realized 5 characters is too much to service every week. But the other minor issues around that too were that yes, NBC specifically told Susan Harris originally they wanted a gay character, which is what they claimed to me. I found it a little hard to believe, but all the NBC people stick to that story. But they did have to watch that they wanted a gay character. They commissioned Golden Girls with a gay character. That's what they told me. I found it a little hard to believe, but they all stuck to it. But even then, even if that's true, you couldn't get away with giving a gay character much of a life in 1985. People were so scared about AIDS that they thought audiences wouldn't want to hear about him going on a date. They wouldn't want to hear about his life. So it was going to be a very limited character. And you add to that the idea that he was going to take up screen time, and the other women really, if you're going to tell a story about women living together partly because they're pooling their resources so they can afford to live, how would they be able to afford a live-in servant? And then from a more practical point of view, actresses like to have what they call bits of business to do while they're performing scenes. So they want to be able to stand there and chop vegetables or cook or whatever and move around as they deliver their lines. But if you have Coco waiting on them hand and foot, then the women are kind of trapped at the table. So they really kind of thought about it a lot more and realized that his character didn't fit in.
Now, Stan, so many of us assume because we're gay and we love the show, and it's so gay friendly and smart about gay stuff. I mean, I cannot, a week does not go by where we don't see someone, and because we're gay and homophobic, we say, well, he's going to fly right on out of here. Well, we all quote the show and we love it. But there were not it was not written by a room full of gays. What was the story with that? What was it like being a gay writer in that writer's room?
Well, first I want to thank my friend Lizzie Kramer who gave me 4 of these glasses today for tonight, and this is the Estelle one, which I'm drinking rosé out of. But not to get too heavy, but at that time it was the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, and the writer's room, we couldn't talk about that. I could not be open about being gay. Everyone thinks everyone was just gay and running around flying through the windows on that show. But my writing partner, Jim, and I were told by our agents, if there's any functions, you have to bring a woman to it. You couldn't talk about if I went to West Hollywood that weekend. I couldn't say that. I had to just say, oh, I went to a bar. There was one time when we came in and I was living in Silver Lake and I went to a garage sale, and I love vintage clothing, and I bought some sweaters. And when they found out, I don't remember who it was in the writer's room, were like, you have to burn those, because what if that person that had AIDS? So we were living in a completely different time. Luckily, years after I was on staff, I think it got more open, and they hired people like Mark Cherry and other gay people to write on the show. But when I was there, it was very, very much in the closet.
But even then, not a lot. Mark Cherry and his writing partner, who was not his romantic partner, but they were both gay men, talked about how they had trouble getting staffed on the show. They were out, but they had trouble getting staffed. There was an NBC executive who came to the Golden Girls executive producer and said, do we really want to hire gay lovers to write on our show? And the executive producer stood up for them and said, that's a terrible question, and how dare you? And they did get hired. But even then, that many years later, it was still a weird situation for a gay writer.
Yes, and even I've told this story, but Estelle Getty was the only one that came up to us on our first day on the set, and she pulled us aside and said, you're one of us. And I thought she meant Jewish, and she actually meant gay, because she thought of herself as kind of gay adjacent because she was in Torch Song Trilogy. But she was very much like, your secret's safe with me. But the fact that she had to take us around the corner of the set to have that conversation shows the mentality of Hollywood at that time, even in a very revolutionary sitcom.
Our next question, it comes to us from Eric.
Wait, hold on. Oh. I have a clue as to what may have happened to Coco, though.
Oh, what?
I was watching Designing Women the other night, and he popped up as a side character who was a friend of Anthony's, who was also, they became friends during his unfortunate incarceration. So there's a clue as to what happened to Coco.
So Coco was a queer in jail, is what you're telling. Okay, I'm
and that was after he had been a cop and divorced Vera from Alice.
And
there it is.
And
yeah.
Jim, do you know any of the other actors that were auditioned for Coco?
I know 2 because I talked to them for the book. One of whom was Jeffrey Jones, who ended up playing the principal in Ferris Bueller.
Yes.
And also Paul Provenza, the comic, told me that he auditioned. And It's so funny because this was, of course, 30-something years ago, so people's memories vary. But Paul remembers being told that the character was going to be sometimes in drag. And so Paul went to the audition in drag. And they were like, that's not what we're looking for. So he tells the whole story in the book. But I don't remember anybody else, and none of the producers remember the whole idea that their character could ever be in drag. But that doesn't mean that rumor wasn't going around town and it wasn't a choice that Paul made for the audition.
And Frank, where can we get that book?
The Mr. Jim Colucci's book, you can go to Amazon.com and get Golden Girls Forever. And it is, I'm telling you, it really ups the standard for what a book about a TV show can be for a companion volume. And I'm not just saying that because I'm married to that one, but I really is an incredible, incredible book. Jim spent 10 years on it, and it was a New York Times bestseller, and it continues to sell and sell and sell, and you can help it along and do that. And you can also, I'm going to say it once more, you guys can donate tonight. And we're raising money. It's a benefit tonight for the Lodge Miami. It's victim response. and they help folks who are victims of domestic abuse and rape and other crime and other hardships. And if you Venmo donations to Flip Phone, and you Venmo more than $20, which you should, you will be entered into a raffle to win a set of the brand new Golden Girls Geeky Tikis. They are amazing tikis. They're $100 value. They're spectacular. Jim Colucci is holding them up. There's one for each of the girls, and you definitely want to Venmo more than $20 to @FlipPhone. So you'll be able to do that.
And there's been such a rise in domestic violence with people being stuck at home. So this is even more important now to donate to an organization like that. So we really appreciate anything anybody can give.
And we're at $834. So getting.
Oh, awesome.
Wow, that's so cool.
That's great.
You all are so generous and so loving, and we thank you.
And it's Miami-based because we thought that would be really good for our Golden Girls event. Alaska, we've got a question for you from Eric. What is your all-time favorite episode of the Golden Girls?
Watch it, watch it, watch it.
It's so hard. It's so hard because they're really different from like the beginning to the end, like the later seasons versus the early seasons. I always go to A Little Romance, because it sort of is the formula where like one of them is dating someone, but they don't want to tell the other girls because they might be uncomfortable. And then he comes over and then everyone's surprised. Blanche gets really uncomfortable. So then there's like this really bizarre dream sequence. So like, I always answer A Little Romance.
Would that happen to be?
You need to change your answer.
Would
Take
that
one
happen
of
to be
mine
when
next
she offers
time.
him something? Or what is she, Alaska, what does Blanche offer him?
What? Shrimp?
Thank you. Thank you. That was what I was going for. Pleased with being able to do that. Here's an interesting thing. Chris writes in and says, considering the contemporary shows of the time, what TV show would you like to have seen a crossover episode with the Golden Girls?
Ooh, I love that one. Oh, Cheers. Because here's why. Because
A contemporary show.
a contemporary show from now or a contemporary from the show
I
that?
think time of that time is the question.
Yeah, of that time.
Oh, I thought
era.
they meant now.
Of that time, I say Cheers, and here's why. Not only was it one of the other best multicam shows of its day and had great writing, but how fun would it be to see Dorothy show up at a bar in Boston and trade barbs with Carla? And
Were they on at the same time?
yeah,
They
and
were?
the other thing is that the Cheers, what I learned from talking to the Golden Girls writers, and I didn't talk to the Cheers writers, but I'll bet they have the same story, is that quite a few times Golden Girls episodes had to be changed after being either pitched or written, sometimes at the last minute, because they found out Cheers was doing the same storyline. And they were both on NBC, so the NBC executive would tell them, you can't do it, Cheers is doing it. Or probably told Cheers, you can't do it, Golden Girls is doing it. And there's even one example in the book, I'm trying to remember which episode they had to completely rewrite at the last minute because Cheers was doing something similar. They both did do Jeopardy episodes.
How about Facts of Life? Mindy Cohen said, I think they were at Sunset Gower, not at the same time, but maybe the same time. That would have been fun.
Oh, it would have been fun. And they were in production for 3 years overlapping. So yeah.
Yeah, because I could see Charlotte Rae probably knew those girls.
Oh, I'm sure she did.
Yeah, that would have been an easy one.
Alaska, is there a show you would have liked to have seen? Even now would like to see them cross over in our fantasy world.
The Cosby Show would be amazing. 'Cause that was like the other that was like the #1 show at the time as well, right?
Yeah.
And Designing Women, please.
Oh my God, would that have been great? I mean, Sophia would have had to take back a lot of her Designing Women insults that they loved to throw into the show, but that would have been the best crossover ever. I love that.
No,
answer.
I think Sex in the City would have been great.
Yes.
Oh,
You've seen the TV Land video where they did where B plays Carrie Bradshaw.
That was really funny.
Yeah, great.
I was going to say there was that episode. There was on the TV Land Awards. There was that Sex and the City spoof where they played. Some of the girls played characters from Sex and the City. Jim just showed me on YouTube the other night. There's an episode of the John Larroquette Show that not only spoofs the Sunset Boulevard, but it contains 3 of the 4 Golden Girls are in the episode, and
Really?
John Larroquette in drag plays Dorothy. So you can see it on YouTube.
Was Liz Torres in it?
Yes, Liz Torres is in it. It was written by Mitch Hurwitz and Jimmy Vallely, who were Golden Girls writers, and
who did
it's
Liz
brilliant.
play?
Liz played herself. He played her regular character on the John Larroquette Show, but then also within the Golden Girls musical within the show played Blanche.
How about Gilmore Girls? Let's have a nice girls crossover.
Yes,
There
yes.
we go.
And somebody in the comments just said Murder, She Wrote. Not only would that be great because Angela and Bea were best friends, but also we have the case of the Libertine Bell. Jessica Fletcher helping solve the case of the Libertine Bell would be very funny.
All right, I'm gonna name drop. I was at a Bob Mackie fashion show, and I met Bea and Angela Lansbury sitting next to each other. So it was Vera Charles and Mame Dennis next to each other, and I thought I was gonna die. That was like gay heaven.
Jim Berg and I were at the movies in Santa Monica seeing, I think, that Don Roos movie, The Object of My Affection, and we heard this loud cackle, and in front of us was Bea and Angela out for like a night at the afternoon at the movies. I think they were smashed. Yeah, I think they were smashed. I kept thinking, who drove them to Santa Monica to go to the movies?
Bea would be my
Probably.
guess. Bea would be the person who drove them there.
Yeah.
Smashed or not.
We always had a production assistant follow her home or drive her home from certain parties.
Well, there were stories that, at the end of the day, there'd be somebody stationed to hand her tumbler of vodka as she walked out the door, and that she would have basically a tumbler of liquor in the car with her while she was driving home, and that someone had come to her and told her, that she had been spotted driving off the lot with a drink in her hand, and and she was like, they were so afraid to tell her it was a production assistant. And she was like, "Oh, thank you. Rather than getting mad at the PA, she was very appreciative to hear that it was visible. And so she just went out and got a new car that was like a Range Rover that was higher up or whatever it was, or SUV, so that people couldn't see in the windows what she was drinking anymore."
Oh, I thought she got tinted windows. I like that story too. I like that version. Either one is works for me. So I've got to see who. I want to give credit to the person who asked us. Okay, Frank wrote in, a different Frank wrote in and asked, who were the best and worst guest stars? And I'm going to throw this in. I'm going to rewrite his question just a tiny bit. Were there any guest stars who were a pain in the ass? So who wants to, Stan, talk to us a little, and then Jim, you jump in.
I can only say, and it's not that she was a pain in the ass, but in Rose's mother, Jeanette Nolan, who played Betty's mother, she had a really hard time in that kitchen scene when she does, make the gun out of soap thing. And the other women, you have to remember, they have been doing sitcoms all their lives. They know how to do it. And Jeanette Nolan was more of a drama actress and did hour shows like Gunsmoke. So she just didn't have the rhythm, and she couldn't get the lines, and they got very, 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 very frustrated. And so I just remember everyone's like, just do the scene in pieces, just get it on film, rather than they were used to doing it like a play and doing the whole scene.
Jim, do you have any gossip on, were there any guest stars who drove the women crazy?
Yeah, and sometimes it was unfair because Bea really had an issue with them calling Dorothy ugly, and so she also then would kind of project that onto the male guest stars that she would be given to have a romantic relationship with, and sometimes wouldn't be happy if the guy wasn't handsome enough. She would think it was a statement about her. So there would sometimes be problems with that, but the ones I remember off the top of my head, Mickey Rooney couldn't stick to the script and drove them crazy, and bless his heart, I love him, Dick Van Dyke, I think at the time was suffering with alcoholism, and they would tape the show twice. Once they called the dress show, which was the dress rehearsal that they would actually tape, have dinner break, and then the air show. And at least for the dress show, I think Dick was drunk, and so they sobered him up during dinner and used what they were planning on using anyway, which is the air show. But I know that was one issue.
Alaska, who was your favorite and least favorite guest star on Golden Girls?
Well, I remember the woman who gets married to Big Daddy, who's much younger. She has like 2 lines, and I know in the book, Jim, she explains that she's like, I had way more lines, and they kept cutting my lines because they were jealous or like something.
Yeah,
so, but what happened there? What was that?
I mean, it's hard to tell why they would cut the lines. So she, in her mind, she thought Rue had something to do with it. It's hard to see if that's true, because sitcoms tend to be overwritten. They're written too long, and then a lot of times during the week they're rewriting. They're having to cut things. This isn't working. So cuts are normal in a sitcom. But she felt that her part was much bigger in the beginning of the week, and she thought that much like it's a true to life story, much like Blanche, that Rue did not like having a younger woman in her storyline. And so that Rue would arrange it so that the scenes were shot over her shoulder so you couldn't see her face, and that her lines were cut. And so she was dissatisfied by the end result.
And you also have to remember, I know, Jim, you brought up the thing called the laugh spread, and that's how long laughs would go. So when we first started the show, you have to remember when studio audiences came in, the show was not on the air, so they didn't know what it was. By the time we got later into the season, the audiences knew those characters. So it was almost they would start laughing before the lines were even said. So the laugh spreads got bigger and bigger. So then we had to like start to trim, the show as we went along, and sometimes on the spot.
I want to remind everybody that they can Venmo donations to the Lodge Miami. We're doing tonight as a benefit, and it's called Victim Response, the Lodge Miami, and they help out victims of domestic abuse, which, as Stan pointed out, is even worse now at a time when people are confined to close quarters. And if you Venmo to Flip Phone, you will, and you do more than $20, which we hope you will, we hope you dig deep, you will be entered into a raffle for Geeky Tikis of the 4 Golden Girls. It's a $100 value, so definitely do that. And Jim, hold them up again so people can see what they look like, and hopefully folks will be able to do it. There they are, and there's one for each character, and they're gorgeous. You can see them. And also, I want to tell people, if you want to find out cruise information, we did back-to-back Golden Girls cruises right before all this went down. We had such an amazing time.
And we missed everybody. We met the best people. And if you're out there, we're sending love, and we're thinking about you, and we'd love to hear from you. It was so extraordinary. And all the stories that I was told by people of what the show meant so much to me. So thank you for sharing those.
And definitely, here's how you find it. You go to goldenfansatsea.com. So for more information on the cruise coming up next year, goldenfansatsea.com. And we're getting requests for Alaska to be on the cruise. So.
Look, everybody, it's Cindy from the cruise. Cindy, wave.
Hello, Cindy.
Cindy! That's fantastic.
Cindy for a second.
Hi,
Cindy?
everybody. I miss everyone.
Don't get up, Cindy. You just keep sleeping there.
Cindy, we had the most amazing time, and I'm as crabby as Frida Claxton, and I came off that ship I was like, here, call me, let's get together. Here's follow me on Facebook. Let's be friends. Oh, I'm never that person. We found our tribe on that ship. I have to say, it was just amazing, and you guys showed us just absolutely wonderful time.
With the other co-hosts, the other panelists, they don't know what they're getting, maybe.
Oh, Stan.
What?
Alaska. Jim.
What?
Well, you're getting a set of Geeky Tikis yourself. Yes, you're gonna get Alaska, you're getting a set. And Stan, you're getting a set. And you know what? I'm getting a set. Jim's not getting a set because he's got a set. So anyway, I'm getting a set now. So
Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord.
Thank you.
So thanks to the folks at Geeky Tiki's for doing that, and Chad for pestering them and telling them to do that, and Jim for noodling them as well, and for making great content. We really do love them over there. And it wasn't my first Geeky Tiki experience, believe me. I have the Batman ones, I have Star Wars, I love them. So thanks to them. And
thanks to Toink Toys and Beeline Creative. Toink
It's
Toys and
T-O-Y-N-K.
Beeline Creative.
They're the folks behind. They did a Batman set that I swear I am customer number one. You couldn't have created something that was any more me. So I've got another question for you guys, and I love this. This comes in from Dan. Dan said, double entendres were everywhere on the show. Was there ever a time when it got a little too naughty and something didn't make it from the script to the screen? Stan, take that for us.
Oh my God. No, I was there the first year and we got away with a lot because I think people were still so shocked that these kind of lines could come out of women of that age. Like in my episode of Adult Education, the line, "You can kiss my A." We wrote it and I'm like, I said to my writing partner, Jim, they're never going to let us. It's going to be cut. And then all of a sudden it's in all the rehearsals. And then and then all of a sudden they're filming it, and then it's on the air. So I was shocked myself. I think we were able to get away with a lot more because it was coming from these women's mouths.
And
the producers always said that having older characters gave them leeway to talk about things and use words that other shows couldn't. And the other thing is that even with network censors, you'll find on the same network, if you're a hit show, you can get away with a lot more than a non-hit can. They look the other way. One example where
as the show got more popular, they could just say like, "We're not listening to the network." The people love it, and you could say anything. The first year, people are really nervous because they want to keep the show going, and there's just a lot of money involved.
Right, and there are definitely examples of lines that had to be changed, and the one I remember the most ended up benefiting us because. If you remember the episode where Blanche gives Sophia the makeover to go out with Cesar Romero, and she stuffs her bra, so Sophia comes out with the two giant, like she's in that red dress with the giant boobs. And Blanche's original line was, "I took an 85-year-old woman and turned her into a drag queen." And the censor thought that gay men were going to be offended by even the use of the words drag queen, and so they wouldn't let them say that. Or I'm sorry, it wasn't drag queen; it was the other way around. It was I took an 85-year-old woman and turned her into a 65-year-old gay man. That's what it was. And they thought that gay men were going to be offended. And so they switched it to drag queen. And that ended up being a funnier joke. But it was that even then they had to switch something.
So let me ask this question. This kind of really piggybacks on that one. This is coming in from Misty Lee. Misty Lee asks.
Misty Lee? Is she a stripper?
She opens for Alaska, I think.
Okay.
So on the road. But I know Misty Lee asks that the show was delightfully progressive when it came to LGBTQ storylines, AIDS, feminism, interracial couples, etc. Was there ever any pushback from the network on taboo topics? And also, I think that dovetails with what you were saying about these older women being able to say things. So, Stan, why don't you start us on that?
No, and also during that time, like Facts of Life did a lot too. They would have very special episodes, which was different with Golden Girls. It was just, that was part of their life. It didn't have to be a special episode. These women just talked about things that they were dealing with. But they did it with such a funny way and with such big jokes, they could get away with any topic. And I think once we started to see that these topics were accepted coming out of these women's mouths, it gave the show leeway to keep going. And you see in future seasons, they kept pushing the envelope about the different subjects that they did, like suicide.
Definitely. And I have to say, do you think it was also part of it was that it was these women talking about these topics that made us able to go down the road with them?
It was just, and it's also not just these women, but these women that we all grew up with on other TV shows. So it's very comforting. We know B. Arthur, we know Betty White. It's just like, you feel like I want to sit with them and I want to hear what they have to say. And we could go through their journey with it. I mean, a lot of these episodes, they weren't comfortable with certain things, so that we could take audiences through laughter. And I really learned that on the show. If people are laughing, they're able to accept and take in more things. And rather than if you hit them over the head with, this is what the episode is about. So I think the show was able to accomplish so much through laughter.
I've got a question here from Shelly, but before I get to that, I want to tell you guys, first of all, if you want to find out cruise information, you go to goldenfansatsea.com. We had an amazing time of it, and you will too. And we do, by 2021, we'll all be ready for a good cruise. Also, tonight's show is a benefit for Victim Response, the Lodge Miami. And if you Venmo donations to them, we will see that they get it. Venmo to FlipPhone, at FlipPhone, and that will be the way to do it. And also, if you donate more than $20, you'll be entered into a raffle for Geeky Tikis of the Four Women. They are amazing reproductions of the girls, and you can drink out of them. They're these ceramic tiki mugs, and they just came out. They just dropped, as the kids say. Although they're ceramic, maybe we shouldn't say dropped. But they're spectacular. And so you can be entered into a raffle if you donate more than $20. So please do that. Chad, what are we up? We're over $800, aren't we?
Yes, let me look at the total. And we're almost out of time as well. We are at $1,420.
Oh,
my God,
Wow.
they're amazing.
That's amazing.
you all are so wonderful. Thank you so much.
There's a question somebody's been asking over and over in the chat. Do you know why there was a cup of a different color on the fridge door on seasons 2 through 6? They've been writing that 300 times in the notes.
Jim,
I've seen the question. That I don't know. You know, people often ask about the exclamation point carved in the front door, supposedly, and that's really just an accident of decorative paint. I don't know about the refrigerator door. That would be the props department just moving things around or forgetting to move things around in the kitchen.
All right, since we are running out of time, Stan, what was your absolute favorite moment on the set?
I think it was just when I would stand there in between the actors, these brilliant actors on one side of me, and then an audience of all ages on the other. And I couldn't believe that these actors were saying my lines and these people were laughing at them. For a new writer, that was just, and how did I land at this spot as this show was blowing up? Was just extraordinary, and I appreciated every single moment that I was there.
Now, we've been getting some questions. Alaska, were you a fan also of the Golden Palace?
Well,
You can say no.
well, yeah, no. I mean, it's sort of like the moment had passed, and it sort of feels like they're trying to retool something that was already so perfect, and so it doesn't. The magic is not there, and I watched it all, like I went back and watched it all just because I'm like a historian and a student of all this whole phenomenon, but it's not like something I go back and watch. It's just the Dorothy episodes are great.
Definitely, when they're all together. So Heidi wrote in and asked, if B. Arthur had stayed for another season, how would you have ended the series? What's your fantasy ending for the series? Alaska, have you thought about that ever?
Oh my God, no, because it works out. I mean, it really works out because Dorothy finally like falls in love, and like so her storyline is completed. I mean, I guess Rose were sort of left open-ended because it isn't really tied up. Blanche kind of meets that one guy who wants to take it slow, so we're like led to assume that maybe something happens there. So I don't know, something with Rose.
Works for me. Jim, how fast can you tell the I got drunk with B. Arthur story?
All right, I'll tell it fast. I spent the day with each of the ladies, it turns out, in their living rooms. And with B, I had to try to find a way to get in touch with her The Screen Actors Guild, who I usually use to get in touch with actors, only had what they called a referral number. It wasn't an agent's number. So when I called it, I got an answering machine that said, I can't come to the phone right now. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm leaving a message for B directly. I was so unprepared for that. So I left her a message where I sounded like a real goody-goody, like, Miss Arthur, I'd like to talk to you. And about a week later, I'm driving in LA and I get the phone rings and it says B Arthur because I put her number in my phone. And despite the fact that I'm driving, I'm trying to talk to her. And B said, I don't want to talk about the show anymore. I've done interviews already and it wasn't a happy time in my life. But call me next week. She kept doing that. And we ended up having like this phone relationship that went on for weeks and weeks, where she would tell me each time that we talked, I don't want to do it, but call me again and we'll talk. And you could tell she was softening about it. She really wanted to kind of suss out what I was after. And so it was this whole long relationship that had a lot of twists and turns to it. But there was one moment where she called me and I was in the Beverly Hills Public Library and I had to take it because I didn't know if she'd ever call back if I didn't pick up. And I'm in the middle of the library. There's no way to get out. And so I pick it up and I'm trying to talk softly. And people, the moment I pick up the phone, are yelling at me, get off the phone. You're in a library. Get off the phone. You're in a library. And I can barely hear B. And finally, I just had to, I half covered the phone with my hands, although I think she still heard, but she ended up laughing. And I just screamed at everybody in the library, fuck you, it's B. Arthur. And then went back to talking to him. And he said something like, well, call me next week. I'm going to Chicago for the weekend. Call me next week and we can talk about again and whatever. And so again, don't never be a goody-goody with B. Arthur. She saw through bullshit like anything. And so I said to her, oh, I so look forward to talking to you again, Miss Arthur. And she said, I don't, and hung up. So when I finally sat down with her in her house, she had her bare feet up on the coffee table. This was a house that actually her kids had rented for her as a temporary residence because they were redoing her kitchen massively in her own home. And so B didn't really know where anything was in this house, and it was just the two of us. And for the first hour, I'd say she was not into any of the questions. She told me she'd rather talk about Maude. She'd go off on tangents about Maude. And she was giving me yes, no, about Golden Girls. And I thought, oh my God, I'm not getting through to her. And there was a moment at about 3:45 where you could hear on my tape, B muttered to herself under her breath, Judge Judy's on in 15 minutes. And I thought, oh my God, I begged for months to be able to come do this interview. I'm not going to leave so she can watch Judge Judy. So I ignored her. And you can hear her at about 10 after 4 say, I guess I can miss Judge Judy for one day. So she eventually did give me some of the stuff you'll see in the book, give me some answers and some stories. And as I was packing, I was getting ready to leave, but the condition to coming over for the interview was that I would agree to stay and have a drink with her. And so I'm packing up my stuff and I hear her call from the kitchen, Yoo-hoo! And it took me a minute to realize, oh, I'm the only one else in the house. She's forgotten my name. I'm Yoo-hoo. So I said, yes. I went in and she said, pick what you'd like. And she opened up, even though she knew where nothing else was in the house, there was a fully stocked pantry closet full of liquor. And I had to get a car back to Hertz in an hour. And I thought, great, what can I drink half of? And then race to West Hollywood to return this rental car. So I picked white wine. And she emptied, as I'm rummaging through her drawers for a corkscrew, thinking how surreal this is, and I'm rummaging through B. Arthur's kitchen drawers looking for a corkscrew, she emptied the bottle into the 2 biggest balloon goblets I've ever seen, the entire bottle. So I had to slurp the top of the glass before I could even pick it up. And then we sat and we made small talk while she had her feet up on the coffee table, but it couldn't be anything about the Golden Girls because we'd already done that for hours. And we ended up talking about, one of the things we talked about was she really loved what they call hag movies. Those movies like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, where the great stars of yesteryear would do these kind of these schlocky horror films. And so I told her about one that I had seen late night on television in Philadelphia when I was in college that I thought I might have even hallucinated. It was so weird. Where after abusing her son or neglecting her adopted son and preferring her own Siamese cats, Lana Turner's son finally goes crazy and makes her drink out of a saucer of milk on the floor like a cat. And the moment I told Bea that, she sat up and grabbed my arm and said, you must get me a copy of that. So we bonded over that. As I was packing up my computer, I looked at her because one of the twists and turns that had happened along the way, which she had told me that at the Paley Center gala that they were going to be doing, the Paley Center does this festival that actually was canceled this year, but every year they do 2 weeks of panels about shows. Back then, they would do one night about a classic show. And that year in 2006, coincidentally, and to my luck, was about the Golden Girls. So B and Betty and Rue, as well as producers, were slated to be on this panel. And B said to me when I talked to her after the public library incident, come backstage and introduce yourself to me, even though I'd met her a couple times before. Introduce yourself to me and we can talk more. So I went to the green room that night that they were doing the Paley Festival panel, and B was nowhere to be seen. And Betty was going around every table saying, B's doctor said, you are so sick, don't you dare get out of bed. And I remember thinking to myself, Betty is putting a happy face on this. She's bullshitting us to make it all okay, which is what Betty does. She's sweet. So when I'm packing up from after having talked to B and having had the half a bottle of wine, and I looked at B kind of quickly out of the corner of my eye as I said, B, I'm so sorry I didn't get to meet you that night at the Paley Center, but I hear you were really sick. And she had a really guilty look on her face. And I thought, well, that tells me what I needed to know. And B said to me, and I'm sorry that I was so evil to you all those times on the phone. And I said, oh, B, you weren't even, I was evil. Oh, okay, thank you, B, that's nice. So packed up all my stuff, and I asked her something that I hadn't asked Betty when I interviewed her about a week earlier, and I didn't end up asking Rue when I met with her in New York a month later, which is I just wanted to give B a hug. I felt like she was the kind of person that had an imposing exterior, and that people always thought the way to relate to her was to be tough and gruff and throw insults at her and volley with her. And that couldn't have been more wrong, because B was really tough on the outside, but really vulnerable and easily hurt on the inside. And so she mistrusted people, I think, when she first met them. And you had to kind of prove yourself to her, a quick first impression, that you were not a jerk. And I think once she liked you, but once she didn't like you, she didn't like you. So it was really about that impression. Well, I think that spending that afternoon with her, I think she liked me. And I just got the sense that if I said, can I give you a hug, that it would be a nice moment. And so I hugged B, and she was very stiff at first. And then like a split second into the hug, she kind of just collapsed like that, like into my arms. And I thought that tells me everything I need to know about her. And it was such a nice moment. And I walk out the front door, and I'm halfway down the lawn, and she says, yoo-hoo. And I turn around and she goes, I'll tell you another thing. I wasn't sick that night either. And slammed the door closed. So I had a great day with B. I'll never forget.
I have one comment after that, and I don't mean to be... Sidney Sheldon tells shorter stories. And I say that with love. I love that story. I love the whole thing. You are so lucky that you got to have that moment with her.
Yeah, I got to sit with Betty with her golden retriever Pontiac lying on my feet, and Betty gives great interviews and really great answers. And I got to sit with Rue on camera in her apartment. If you go online and look for the Archive of American Television's interview with Rue McClanahan, you can watch the entire thing. And so I had great moments with all of them, and they were all so different. It really, I'll never forget a moment of them.
And Stan, you were one of Estelle's gays in her 5 gay minimum,
one of 5,000, yes.
Yes, but you were one of those. And you can all go lump it, because I'm friends with Alaska Thunderfuck. So that's the way it goes. So you all you have to do. So I'm friends with Barbara Thorndike and all 4 girls and Frida Claxton just by knowing Alaska. So I've got it all. And Dreyfus, we've learned today as well. So Alaska, where can folks see you next? You've got some shows online coming up, yes?
Yeah, we're doing some shows as part of the Digital Drag Fest. So if you go to my Instagram, which is the only Alaska 5000, there's a link in my bio there, and you can find out like when we're going to be doing shows. And
fantastic. And also I want to say, Stan, you're at Zimmerman Stan, yes?
Yes.
Jim, you're at Jim Colucci.
Yeah, on all social media.
And I am at Frank DeCaro Show. So check it out. And I've been posting a lot. It keeps me busy.